We'll chat with Mo about the Bengals. That's at 9:45, and then at 10:06 today, the school levy, the story behind the numbers. This is going to be good. Got a guy coming in studio this morning, the Lakota people who are anti-levy, and has gone through the trouble of actually breaking down the salary figures. And there are some 420-plus educators who make what I would consider a handsome income for working 9 months out of the year. The average Lakota salary, according to this guy, almost $60,000 a year. So the notion that teachers are underappreciated and underpaid, I think, is going to be disputed here in just about 45 minutes on 700 WLW. I think that goes without saying. If there's anyone who thinks that we don't spend enough money when it comes to public schools and kids' education for what you get, it's Scott Sloan. Put that one down. Here to kind of refute that this morning, joining me live in studio, Rich Hoffman and Dan Varney. They are with the anti-Lakota levy movement. We have a few, but I think one of the levy issues out there this year, it's going to cost you a lot of money, is certainly going to be Lakota. Guys, first of all, welcome to the show. And why are so many people in Lakota against this that you talk to?
Well, because it's unsustainable.
Well, wait, don't you like kids? Don't you like good schools? Why do you hate children?
Oh, it's a shame that the argument's poised that way.
Yeah.
But it's a strategy that, and it's not just Lakota. It's Loveland, it's Edgewood, it's Mason. Everybody does this. Every superintendent utilizes the same strategy. And it's if you don't pay the money, then you hate kids. And that's not true, because a good school system is the community, and the kids that go to it usually have parents that tell them to go and be on time and go to college afterwards, and I see the school system taking credit for a lot of that. So when they say you hate kids and that more money equates to kids being better
educated,
better educated, you know it's
Dan, do you think when I hear this ploy being done, and it's done all over the place, is that parents, they should be more insulted than they are, that they're essentially saying that the schools are raising the kids? And basically that's what they're saying, that we've taken the parental equation out of this, and the fact that you're making sure the homework's getting done and they're the school on time and they're fed and ready to go and learn, and that curriculum's being supported in the house. I get the opinion that it is totally up to schools on how your kids perform in those schools.
Well, I think that's correct. I think the big problem here, and specifically Lakota, is the growth is just not sustainable. The costs are just are masking the true GPI index by large amounts. If you look at the school teacher salary over the last 10 years or so, it's just gone up in huge proportions, and it's just not a sustainable model. Our superintendent wants to compare himself to a CEO of a corporation. CEO of a corporation could not operate with 78% of the revenues going to salaries and benefits. It cannot be done.
It can in the public sector, though.
No, in the public sector.
Public sector is different, right?
You'd have a huge problem with the public sector.
Yeah. In the private sector, we know it's lean, it's mean, it's responsive rather quickly to the economic conditions in the country right now. But I think that's the rift for people in Lakota and elsewhere, is the anger over the divide between public and private salaries.
Well, it is, and it's huge. And if you look at their continual growth on that side, it actually boils down to the fact that the Lakota School Board, they've done a bad job as far as negotiating the contract, and that contract goes back to 2005, which ironically was right after the last huge levy was passed.
Rich, I've studied this before. I had these numbers on my show, and it's not too hard to figure out, is that I go back and I look at the long history of Lakota and the excellent performance. I have something like 9 years. The last levy, as you said, was 2005. If how much we pay for our kids' public education is directly correlated to their success. Well, why haven't we seen Lakota schools and other schools, like Little Miami, for example, go from a state of excellence to academic emergency? It was all about the cash.
Well, it's a false statement. What they don't want you to talk about, the Lakota will put out a tremendous amount of material, and they'll ask you to come to all these seminars, and they'll give you PowerPoints, and if you study the PowerPoints, they're just dancing around the central issue. And the central issue, if anybody that runs a business, or I don't care if it's a small grocery store or a large corporation, Lakota's main problem is that they have over 75% of their wages and benefits occupying their total budget of $160 million. And when the community can support a $160 million budget, which we support half that through tax revenues through this, not sources from the state or whatever, $160 million to an education institution, and that's not enough. And then you look and say, well, why are they in an academic emergency? Why do they have an emergency for funding? And it's because they have 75% of all their revenue, all their expenses
tied up in salaries and benefits. We'll get into in just a second, guys. We'll get into what we're talking about here, because you threw a number out, $59,000. That is the average teacher salary in Lakota. Now, does it include benefits? Well, we'll get into that after a quick timeout. Again, in studio, Rich Hoffman and Dan Varney. And you can follow along, too. All this information is linked up on my blog at 700WLW.com. Sloaney 700 WLW. Reds, a loser yesterday. Bengals, well, tried to. All right, we'll try it again tonight. Reds and Brewers live, inside pitch, 710, home of the Reds, 700 WLW. Rich Hoffman, Dan Varney in studio this morning on 700 WLW, fighting against the Lakota levy, which, you may not be in the Lakota district, but if you look at Mason and Edgewood and the other towns and cities that have levy issues before you right now, to me, this is just... It's the same thing. Whether it's Lakota, you could certainly take the argument being made at any school district at any time for why you should give them more money, and it's pretty formulaic at this point. As far as the salaries go, Rich, I'm looking at a chart here. You broke down the top the top 400 or so employees there, and the average is they make $59,000 a year.
It's actually, I was corrected by somebody else from the anti-group that sent me an email telling me that number went up this year. I was going by... 2000,
this is old data.
Well, I was going by early 2010 data. That was 59,000. It's actually 62,000.
62 grand. Now, Is that benefits? It's
just wages.
Just wages.
Just wages.
And that's the average.
That's the average.
When we talk about the high earners, what are they pulling down here?
The top wage earners are...
Are they all administrators?
No, not all of them. You have teachers that are in the $90,000 range.
90 grand for a public school teacher?
90 grand, exactly.
Well, what do you do to earn $90,000?
Well, they'll tell you
working 9 months out of the year.
Yeah, that's right. They'll tell you, well, we earned our doctorate degrees, and we did things along those lines, so we're qualified to make that money. And I'd say that that's probably true to a certain extent for a number, but you have to make decisions. You can't afford to have everybody have a doctorate degree. It's kind of like you need a salary cap, like in sports. You can't afford to have. I mean, there's a reason why there's not T.O. and Chad playing on the same team in every NFL team, because the salary cap prevents that.
Okay, you know what, though? See, I'm against it, and I'll tell you why. I'm a capitalist. If you can make $90,000 a year doing nothing, I mean, it's America. God bless. But I have a problem when the people who are the recipients of our tax dollars get more money and benefits than, let's say, I'm looking at a list you gave me here. A nurse makes about $62K a year. Social workers make $53,000 a year. Doctors, $73,000 on average. Attorneys, $57,000, and then you have Lakota teachers. Some are making in excess of $90,000 a year. And now we're not even talking about benefits here, are we, Dan?
No, we're not. The benefit package is on top of that, and if there's just there's so much goes into this, and then the as you had alluded to earlier, the step raises. The step raises, they're estimating it's going to cost roughly $2.8 million, which is about 3% in salaries and wages. And the transportation cuts that they're proposing is exactly the $2.8 million figure. So it kind of makes you want to know where their priorities are. They want to pay the teachers and benefits and salary $2.8 more million, but yet they'll cut the busing down for the kids. And when they try to put the emphasis on the children, but yet they're taking the transportation.
Well, to me, the guys, I've always for years have now called for a state law. They're worried about protecting the kids. If my kid brings a plastic knife in to spread his peanut butter in kindergarten or cut his apple, he's looked at as a terrorist, and they send him off to Guantanamo Bay. If another kid has a picture of a gun on his shirt, even if it's a toy soldier, that kid gets 3 years detention and is held back a grade. And it's all about protecting our kids from childhood obesity and the boogeyman and drugs and all this stuff. We're so cared at all times about the safety of our children, unless, of course, a levy gets voted down, then they can walk themselves to school in 4-lane traffic. And to say it's about the kids is laughable at that point.
It is.
Yeah, and they're caught red-handed at that point, and that's where they're at this time. We voted for this thing in May, and when we voted for that in May, we didn't give them permission to turn right around and and vote on it again. No meant no. I mean,
it goes on the ballot. So if you say no, all that means is, well, we didn't present our argument clearly enough, and now we're going to ratchet it up, or the rhetoric up some more, and in 5 months it's going to be back on a ballot.
It will be. It'll be back in February. It'll be back in May. It'll be back in August, and it'll be back in.
And we'll cut busing to make the parents scream uncle, right? Because if you got to drive your kid and drop your kid off at school and wait in line between 1,000 other parents dropping their kids off in their suburban assault vehicles, you're going to be late for work. Your boss may not understand. Sports programs are cut. You're going to have to go in your own pocket for that, and so they make it very uncomfortable.
Yes,
for you to do this. Which is the bigger question is, okay, when they have why don't they just get rid of all that excess already instead of presenting it as a levy? If all that other stuff, busing and after school and sports and all that stuff is just none of their business, why are we paying for that to begin with?
Well, that's one of our arguments. They wait until they get into a fiscal emergency before they start cutting. Then they want to make a big deal out of the cuts that they made.
Correct.
When Lakota was sitting there in 2007, they had a roughly $54 million surplus in their budget. And instead of responding to higher costs that they were paying out and adjusting their budget, they just continued to spend until the surplus was gone.
Rich, what would happen if they took a 30% haircut across the board? I've seen this in a lot of other sectors. Here at Clear Channel, cuts have happened.
Right.
A lot of other private sector businesses have reacted to the recession and along the Great Recession by slashing employment costs, by laying people off, by cutting employees, making people do more, and all the way up to salary cuts of 10 to 30 to 40% in some cases.
Right. That would mean that the superintendent at Lakota, instead of making $147,000, I believe is what he makes there, he would make $103,000. I believe it comes down to.
Still good money.
He's still making six figures. He's still doing well for himself. The teacher that makes $78,000 now goes down to a measly $53,000. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in the community that would love to make $53,000 a year. Even professionals that have been to school with master's degrees that are working in the private sector.
Dan, what should the cutoff be? An entry-level teacher makes what? Is it fair for them to get a 30% cut too?
Well, I believe 25 to 30% is fair.
Based on the salary range is what we're talking?
It's just part of the economic picture. If you look generally, everybody, as you stated, has to take a haircut. And it's just part of the real world right now. If things change, then other things can change. But, it's just the lack of fiscal responsibility. Scott, they had a school board meeting last week where it was over 100 new hires for Lakota, and that was to replace people that have retired or left the system for whatever reasons. They passed this whole multiple-page listing of new hires, and someone in the general audience asked, what was your allocation for funds to pay for those new hires? The response was, we don't know.
Wait, we don't know?
We don't know.
Yeah.
They hired.
So we'll just come to you for the money, and we'll keep adding cost, and then we'll go, well, we'll be in trouble unless you guys you hate kids if you don't approve this levy. The education's going to suffer. Hang on, you guys got more time?
Oh, yes.
All right,
absolutely.
hold on just a second. Rich Hoffman and Dan Varney in studio this morning talking about the Lakota levy. And I'll ask, too, just ahead here on 700 WLW, when you look about the big picture, it's really about unfunded state mandates and federal mandates. And we've heard of taxpayer response in the sense of there's been double dipping. I've added it up at Lakota. It very may well be triple dipping we're talking about here to the average homeowner. We'll get into that after a quick timeout on 700 WL. All right, we'll get a news update in just a minute on 700 WLW. I got all sorts of stuff to ask you guys. Can you stay for like another segment at 10:06?
Absolutely.
Sure. You just handed me a list of what teachers, administrators, and the like, that the highest paid ones in many districts make. I'll get into the Mason, Little Miami ones here in just a second, guys, because it is incredible. Also, I'll ask you, too, about minimum cost per pupil, because 10,000 something is the state average, and they'll contend they spend less in Lakota and other districts, but even that is not true. As far as the OEA, when you show up to a meeting, Dan, and you've had public hearings before regarding the Lakota levies since 2005 that have gone down for good reason. How do they combat that and say that it's justified? What happens inside a public meeting if I should go to one?
Well, you'll hear a lot of talk, but you won't really get a lot of facts. They're very guarded in their facts because just as your guest you had on last week will tell you, they guard the information that they want disclosed to the public. They want to talk about their increased costs. They don't want to give you the true numbers. And that's precisely what we've done here is we've kind of dug into the true numbers to find out what it really reveals. And they do a lot of talk of new hiring, and they don't really have a plan. They just have a number of people that they want to occupy these spots, but they don't have a budget for it. And, well, when the budget comes in, then they go to the taxpayers.
Well, we also have, too, the unfunded mandates from the state that says
Yes,
we're going to cut your education allotment, meaning you got to pay. We're already paying with a levy, a property tax. So they come back and say, well, you got to make up the difference as a property owner. And then on top of it, the money that you pay is also funneled to underfunded districts as well. So it's like a triple dip that goes on here. I get tagged once on my property tax. I get tagged for the difference because the state has mismanaged and misspent our money. And then I got to fund some district that my kids don't go to make up for their lack of funding. And we talk about fairness in the tax revolt going on in this country, and taxes overall, as a portion of the GDP, are low. But the problem is all the spending and all the commitments and entitlements that we have to face here, certainly well within our lifetimes. Guys, hang on. I got to get to news, and we'll talk more, too, and work your phone calls in. Scott Sloan, 700 WLW.
This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Scott Sloan on demand.
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
Hey, it's Loney on 700 WLW. It's the Tri-State Fiscal Watch, and one of the few forms of government spending you have a direct say in, of course, are school levies. And you know my stand on school levies over the past couple of weeks. If you live in Lakota, you should be outraged. I'm looking at the list of the 424 highest paid Lakota employees. And the 16th highest rated salary is a teacher who makes over $95,000 a year. And that's just a teacher. Superintendent pulls down about $1.50. You have principals that make over north of $100,000 a year, but there's a teacher that makes $95,000 a year. Someone called during the break and didn't want to go on, but yelled at me, wanted to know how much I made and how I would like it if someone told me how much that I make. Well, I have someone tell me how much I make, and that would be the people who do the budgets here at Clear Channel at the Death Star, and that is based on ratings and revenue. Though you heard Daryl Parks talk about that on Saturday morning. That's based on reality. Okay, what I make is not based on property values. It's not based on what you make. It's based on what the market will bear, and that is the problem you should have if you're a taxpayer in this triple-dipping system that we have to fund, unfortunately. Rich Hoffman and Dan Varney from NoLakotaLevy.com joined me in the studio this morning on 700 WLW to talk about that. There wasn't it about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, Rich, that the Ohio State Supreme Court said that the way we fund schools is unconstitutional. Could you name me another law or a ruling that a court has prescribed from the highest level that has been ignored by the people who are supposed to write the law? How is it possible that they are in direct violation of the state Supreme Court of Ohio?
It's called union lobbyist.
The union lobby. So I always thought the law of the land was the Constitution, be it the United States Constitution or the Constitution of the state of Ohio. So the union contract supersedes constitutional law. That's what you're saying.
According to them.
Everything I learned at Lakota is wrong. In history class, government class, ethics class.
According to them, if you throw enough money at the situation, which we indirectly fund all this stuff, they get their money indirectly from us, and they use that to supersede state constitutions and federal constitutions.
How are lawmakers and legislators? How are they not being held responsible by the court?
Lobby power of the unions.
Because we just continue to ignore what the court said and kick the can down the road, and they're not being. No one's being called to Columbus. No one is being charged. It's amazing.
There's only one that I can think of, and it's not even the state of Ohio. I can only think that Governor Chris Christie in New Jersey is the only one that's really taken a hard stand against the lobby power of these unions. And the politicians, the local ones, he had a great analogy, and we put it on our website under leadership as far as what's required to kind of bring things in check. He made a great analogy that when he arrived as a governor, he realized that there were some bullies on the playground, and he saw quickly that you either get bloodied or you fight back. And most of the time, the lucrative government jobs, whether you're a congressman or a state representative or whatever, you don't want to get bloodied up by a powerful union. So they tend to kick the can down the road, like you said.
Dan, I was a little unfair here. I know you guys are with Lakota, but there are other school districts out there that we have a teacher, as I said, Lakota, making $95,000 a year. I'm looking at Lebanon City Schools in Lebanon. Highest paid teacher there makes only $81,000 a year. In Little Miami, the highest paid teacher, $85,000 a year. In Mason, the highest paid teacher in Mason School District, who also, by the way, people in Mason facing a levy this year, highest paid teacher there makes $105,000 a year.
You believe that?
$105,000 a year. And that's right. What does the superintendent make there? If the teacher's making $105,000, what's the super pulling down there?
The super is well over $200,000 in Mason.
So I'm looking at $218,000 for the superintendent of Mason Schools. And I'll tell you, there's a reason why the schools are performing so well. It's because our superintendent makes $218,000 and the highest paid teacher makes $105,000.
Yeah, it must be super people.
Right. In spending, that's why you have good schools. But I'm looking at a chart that says some of the highest per pupil spending in Ohio are schools like Cincinnati Public and others that have made improvements but are clearly underperforming, which goes to show me that the funding model's wrong. And when they say that how much we spend is directly attributable to the results, it's backwards.
It's not true. In Lakota's situation, they should be operating at a less cost per pupil. The more pupils you have in a building, certainly your unit cost per student should be lower because you're spreading those expenses out amongst 800 or 900 kids versus 200 or 300 kids in a smaller school.
Yeah, if you have a huge school district, you should spend less because you can spread those costs out. You're still paying for a building and heat and air conditioning.
That's correct.
Are relative to how many kids are there, and that's in the bigger scale. Have you ever pointed out to them how maybe some of the Catholic and parochial schools in the area, Rich, are able to do more with less and achieve better, if not the same, if not better results?
They're not interested in listening to any of that. It's almost like a kid on the playground telling them they can't swing on the swing, and they just put their hands over their ears and stomp their feet and pretend like you didn't say a word.
Is it unreasonable to ask? I don't want to see teachers make $18,000 a year.
No,
I don't want to see him make $30,000 a year unless you maybe just got into the thing. But it seems outrageous that the median the average salary in Lakota is far less than what a lot of these people are making.
Right, and we love the teachers. We love our kids. We love the buildings. We built them. We built those buildings. Mm-hmm. We built that community. I've been in the Lakota district most of my life, and I know Dan has raised my family there. We have every interest in the world that the teachers do well. But if you look at this as a business person and you look at their costs, and it's not to be unfair to the teachers, but hey, they've been raking it in pretty good for a while.
I don't want to make it about because I get accused of bashing. And teachers have an extremely important job. They spend more time with our kids than we do for about 9 months out of the year, and I want to make sure that they're comfortable and well paid. But well paid is you can't define that. It's an arbitrary thing. It's an emotional appeal that they will make, and it's certainly not based on fact. And the current economic conditions, where you see household budgets shrinking 20, 30, 40, 50% or more in some cases, and the reality with what's happening in public schools is completely disconnected from the reality of what's happening on Main Street.
It is, and we really need to emphasize it's not a witch hunt against teachers. It's not a witch hunt against the schools. It's just the fact that the dollars that they're demanding is not sustainable.
Let me get some calls in here too, because we'll start with Roger on the cell 700 WOW. Roger, you're on the show. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Sloanian, two knuckleheads. You guys give the unions a lot of credit. I'm very involved politically. I know our state reps and state senators, and our state senator in our district will not touch the education thing. And he's the head of the Senate Education Committee at the state of Ohio. He won't touch it because he's afraid he won't be elected. And it's not because of unions. He's just afraid he's going to lose either where he goes. So don't be the unions have hardly any influence on these guys. And these guys are all Republicans, by the way.
Well, which guys are we talking about? The House
Gary
that is
Cates.
controlled by Democrats?
I'm talking about Gary Cates is the head of the Republican-controlled Senate. Education Committee.
But what about the House? It's controlled by Democrats.
This was going on with the Republicans before Democrats took over.
Don't ignore that. So the unions have no power.
They're not pulling the strings on funding. I can tell you that.
So what you're saying are lawmakers have no legislators in Columbus have absolutely no accountability, no responsibility for how much money is spent at schools. Is that what you're saying?
They have every bit of it, and they won't spend. They won't get up and get us fined to correct what's going on.
Well, that's kind of what we're saying.
No, but you're saying the teachers are influenced, and the teacher unions are not influencing these guys.
Then why have teachers unions?
Well, for fair working rights, but they're not controlling.
No, wait, for what?
No, Sony, don't try to divert from the fact.
No. The teachers unions are a lobbying group. You realize that, right? They lobby lawmakers to get what they want. That's what they exist for.
Sony,
you said working conditions. What working conditions aren't covered under OSHA?
Sony, let's go back and talk about what I was talking about, and you're trying to divert the fact.
I'm asking you questions, and you keep ignoring me. I said if unions, you said it's about it. You quickly dismissed it as a safe work environment, and I said which work environments aren't covered under OSHA.
Tony, I didn't say environment. I said conditions.
Okay, the conditions aren't covered under OSHA.
No. We're talking about class load, curriculum, all that other stuff.
Well, the curriculum is also set at the state level.
No,
it's not really. They don't have mandates from the state that says what they have to teach in Ohio schools.
They have a broad spectrum.
Right. So you're wrong on that one. Next point is that so the OEA, so the teachers unions exist to protect the teachers and their work environment. It has nothing to do with lobbying legislatures and the state and the feds. It has nothing to do with it.
Quit trying to talk what I'm telling you.
Well, you still haven't answered the question. That's why I have to keep talking.
I did.
What is the job of a union? A teachers union does what?
To organize their benefits, but they're not. That's not. But you said they're controlling the state legislator, and they're not.
They don't lobby the state.
Everybody lobbies the state,
right? But they have a lobby group. Okay, but there are other lobby groups out there, but I can't name too many whose salaries and income are derived from shaking down taxpayers.
But yeah, you do. The Home Builders Association, they control it.
They don't control. They don't control prices. The markets, that's why the value of your home has dropped 30%. The home, of course, everyone has a lobby group, but their salary is directly attributable to the lawmakers at the state and certainly the local levels. Am I missing something here, guys? It's tough. It is tough making a logical argument based on facts and numbers with someone who's doing it from a purely emotional perspective. You found that to be true, Dan?
Yes, it is.
What is the job of the unions, Rich? Teachers' unions?
To negotiate contracts, secure the best benefits they can for the people they represent.
I understand that, and I want teachers to have good benefits and good money.
And according to our charts, they've been extraordinarily successful at that. So much so that they're collapsing under their own success.
Real quick, on some final points here. What's going to happen come November? Any predictions, Dan?
Well, we believe that the levy will be defeated, and the thing is that the community's got to look at these facts and figures that we've shown you today. I mean, they're pretty conclusive that they can't operate within the current model that they have. They've developed this over years and years and years and years, and they really haven't been met with a lot of resistance. The group that we've got together, we're organized. We've got different people with different areas of expertise, and we're all digging hard just to bring out the facts. We're not on a witch hunt. We're not trying to fabricate anything. We're just trying to expose things for what they are, because Lakota and the school board and the superintendent are just not projecting a very clear picture of what's actually going on here.
And Rich, how hard is it to find a lot of these numbers? I heard, and I mentioned on my show a few weeks ago that I heard through a couple teachers, one teacher, one administrator, that in Mason, where they're trying to approve a levy, that the last year administrators there got a 5% pay increase, and that's the administrators. Right. And it's hard to find that information out, digging through public record, and it's almost like you got to know where to look. If you find roadblocks up to trying to find this information?
Oh, yeah, they're not forthcoming at all, but a lot of this is public record. You can go to your local community papers, like up in Westchester, and Mason's the same one. Cox Publishing, they have the Pulse Journal that they drop off on your driveway, and they publish this stuff. In fact, that's where a lot of these numbers came from. And for a long time, it was easy to go online on their online edition and find that information. I haven't seen it lately. I haven't seen it actually since summertime after this levy failed. The link is broken. So I don't know if they did that on purpose to help them out. I don't know. I went to a guy, a senior citizen that's in our group, and he happened to have that newspaper from March, and he kept it. So that's how I was able to get that.
So he had that information.
He had that information. But it's public record. It shouldn't be that hard to find. But they're certainly not that forthcoming, especially when they realize you're going down this path.
Yeah, you're trying to take money out of their pocket. I got you. Well, keep us apprised. What's going on with this whole thing? If you guys have any more info, well, I'll let you on. We'll talk about it some more.
Great.
Appreciate it. Thanks again, Rich and Dan in studio this morning. Coming up at 10:35 this morning, we have someone that says these two guys are drunk, and they got their numbers all wrong. So we'll hear what she has to say in the issue of fairness and that and much more ahead here. Scott Sloan, 700 WLW. Your forecast from Fox 19. Frank Marzullo says sunny, 85 today, clear, 63, and Tuesday sunny and 90. It's the last gasp of summer. And certainly on the calendar, we're in the last few hours of summer here, with fall starting later this week. It's 68 now, 700 WLW. Scott Sloan at 513-749-7000, 800 the big one, pound 700 AT&T. Free call for you, 10:35 this morning. We have someone to refute everything that the previous two guys said. And apparently this person's maybe a little bit miffed. So we'll get the side as to why you should vote for the Lakota, the Mason, Edgewood, wherever the levies may be. Well, note, too, that we tried to get a hold of Mike Taylor's quoted like in every single news article regarding Lakota schools and the levies, the superintendent there. And Mike, for some reason, won't return our phone calls. It's difficult to try and present the other side when the other side doesn't want to talk. So if you're on the other side, and even though we try to extend an olive branch here to kind of get your take on things, even though I may disagree with it and shoot you down and embarrass you, that's maybe not a reason you should come out. So you can't claim that we are misrepresenting the facts when you don't want to present your side of it. So Nick in Fairfield on 700 WLW. Hi.
How you doing?